Okay. Hello, Service Grisach. Welcome back to the podcast. He has a bird. I am your host, Sean Shelton, and I'm back again with the AFL mascot expert, Jim Shelton. Dad, nice to have you back.
Good to be back.
Yeah.
This last one was fun.
Yeah. So with Pops being back, that must mean we are doing AFL Team Name Rumble. This will be the third edition, in which we will see the Raiders and the Panthers battle. But I was very curious to see how the first two segments would go. We record them at the same time, so we haven't really spoke about it since. I didn't know what kind of reaction it would get, to be honest. And it seems like the second one, especially the Viking Steel Sharks, got a bit contentious, which is exactly what I wanted. But it seems like I'm getting private messages with people who seem to really enjoy it. So that's kind of surprising to me, to be honest.
Well, I mean, that's good. That's good. I think, like we talked about, in the situation that we're all in, we need to have a little fun, and I think everybody misses football, and this is a way to kind of have some fun and talk a little football too.
Kinda. I mean, not really, but I think people. I didn't know if people would actually enjoy listening to us, kind of, for lack of a better word, bullshit. But it seems to be entertaining people, and that's the whole objective, right?
True.
Yes. So without further ado, we will get into our third matchup, which is Raiders, Panthers, Black Panthers, I should say. I said this in the last episode, and I'll repeat it in case people didn't listen. We are going to be as unbiased as humanly possible. We take this very, very seriously. We are professionals in this craft, probably the only people who do it. I mean, I think you have to get paid to be a professional. So maybe leading experts in this field of two. And we take that role very, very seriously, and we will make sure that we are as unbiased as humanly possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No bias at all.
None.
Zero
None
bias.
whatsoever. None whatsoever. So starting with the matchup, we are going to start with the Panthers, actually. And in doing my research and actually talking to you briefly before, I had no idea that panthers didn't exist. And it's really a genesis, or like a category of big cats, which is funny because I recorded a Tiger King review, and actually this morning with Max Pika, and actually part of the information I got was from Big Cat Rescue's website, from that bitch Carol Baskins. But did you watch any of that? Did you watch?
No,
okay,
I haven't.
Don't. You'll lose so many brain cells. Okay. But anyways, yeah, it's a category of cats, which surprised me. What else can you tell us about Black Panthers?
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting, is that any black furred cat could be considered a big cat, could be considered a panther, but it's
which is the black fur and skin is a recessive gene that just some get.
Yeah, it's melanin, so it's a melanistic characteristic of big cats. And it's interesting, even though they have the black fur, if you see them out in the sun, you can still see the spots. Mm-hmm. So it's generally either a leopard or a jaguar. And leopards are more Asia, Africa habitats, and jaguars are more the Americas, South America. Mm-hmm. So in determining this rumble, first we have to determine, okay, what type of Black Panther is it? I was leaning towards a leopard because, being a prog Black Panther and European, there's a better chance that a Asian leopard would make its way to Prague versus, a jaguar coming from South America. But it makes a difference. if we're
Yes, it
talking
does.
about a jaguar or a leopard.
Yes. Well, the other thing I was thinking about is like, who's to say that the Black Panthers are a leopard? You know, Black Panthers have been a Filipino military crew. Black Panthers have been a political movement in the States. And so we went back to the logo,
Well, the logo
and the logo is a big cat, but the big cat has wings. So I don't know what to do with that. So I think
Yeah,
your assessment of a leopard, a black leopard, being more indigenous to more geographically sinful. Um, is sinful an English word? No, it's
not
a
that I know
German.
of.
It's a German word, means makes like full of sin, like since. So
Sense.
I
Okay.
think I just blended some languages there, but I think that makes sense. We're gonna go with a black leopard. Um, and this is not a logo challenge. We only use the logo to confirm our original hypothesis of what the team name mascot is. So just like identifying that a steel shark was a great white by the logo, identifying that a ranger was a Texas Ranger by the logo, we are identifying that this is a large cat based on the logo, but we are not going to give it wings because Black Panthers don't have wings. It's a team name challenge, not a logo
Right.
challenge. Right.
Okay.
So we're gonna go with a black leopard. So what can you tell us about a
Okay.
black leopard?
So a black leopard, and we're going with 11 again, right? A team of 11. So you
Exactly.
would be looking at, and we're going to go with the males, which would be generally a male leopard would get up to 68 pounds, around 68, 70 pounds. Not incredibly huge, cat, but big cat. Two and a half feet high off the ground and length, anywhere to 3 to 5, feet. So not a really big cat. It's interesting. They really are hunt from the trees
Mm-hmm.
in most cases, and their pattern would blend in with the leaves of a tree, and they would stalk their prey by being very, very still and then pouncing on their prey. So they hunt from the trees, which is interesting because
Mm-hmm.
on the field today, there's no trees, right?
No.
They're out there on their 35-yard line, no trees.
Right.
So I think that was an interesting, observation. Also, the black fur actually is a detriment to them because it hinders their communication, which I
Okay.
thought was interesting because they communicate, and they don't. And the other thing is they don't hunt in packs either. They're very solitary animals. But when they do communicate, a lot of times they're looking the leopards behind would be looking at the leopards up front, and they have white markings on their ears and on the tip of their tails that would help indicate that there was danger or
Mm-hmm.
something was approaching. So they actually communicate with those white markings on their ears and on their tails, but a black panther doesn't have that, so it actually hinders the ability to communicate. So if the
Okay.
black panthers today were going to try to audible or try to call something, it'd be a problem
I'm
for
not.
them.
I'm not sure how much communication they'll be doing, but yeah, the leopards are typically the smallest version or a smaller version of black panthers. They what was interesting is they have shorter, stockier legs and big heads, from what I read. But
And shoulder.
and big shoulder. Yeah, they're like stocky but super powerful
They're the best
hunters.
climbers of all the big cats, the leopards.
Right, and they've also been known to uh, to hunt prey much larger than themselves as well. So if they're in an environment where they're the apex predator, so the lions or tigers aren't around, like Southwest Asia more so than Africa, they've been known to uh, uh, hunt prey up to several hundred pounds or even hundreds of kilos at
Yeah,
times. So they're
in
they're
their habitats, they're the apex predator, except
exactly, and
for men. Yeah.
Right. And they have typically they've been known to have very, very strong jaws, some of the strongest jaws, because the way they kill, they go for the throat and actually suffocate the animal before eating them, which I found very interesting.
Right.
And it's interesting that you said men, because men have always been above them on the food chain. But in India, there were stories of jaguars killing hundreds of people prior to being hunted down. There was a British, really famous hunter that famously killed a jaguar that was allegedly responsible for 400 people's deaths.
Wow.
And the thing was,
But that,
is
but
they could
that's
get so
unusual, though, right?
close. That's unusual. But the thing is, they could get so close. That's such the leopard's advantage is stealth and surprise attacks. So
Right.
they would be able to get, because of their smaller frame, get so close or fit into areas that a bigger cat normally wouldn't. And then once they get so close, a surprise attack, man had no one-on-one battle. Man had no chance.
Right.
But to your point, being in an open field with no ability to be stealthy
Right.
might be tough. Might be
And
tough.
the black color is actually a detriment, during the day. They don't have that ability to kind of blend. For one thing, there's no on the field. There's no
Yeah,
trees or
they're
anything.
not going to
They're
have
out
any
there, they're
opportunity,
open.
which
But
is
at
why they're
night,
so
it
successful.
actually, yeah, it would actually help them at night, right?
Right.
The black color. But during the day, it actually was detrimental to them because the way they do stalk their prey
Mm,
and way they do get close and then pounce.
right.
It actually is not good for the black panther.
No, it seems to be they need to get in very, very close and have a surprise attack. And when they can be, they're very successful. We'll see how well they
Right.
do when they're not able to do those things.
Right.
So moving on to the pirate, or excuse me, a raider. What exactly is a raider?
Well, this was kind of interesting for me because in my 5-year career of doing this, I've never really investigated the Raiders, right? Because
Right,
you were
right,
always playing for the Raiders, and it was always doing a motivational message based on the other team or the other, the team name or the team location. So I wanted to do a little research on the Raiders, and first off, where did that name come from? And really, when I look at the Swarco Raiders, and being the sister club to the Oakland, now Las Vegas Raiders, where did that name come from with the Las Vegas Raiders? And the interesting thing is back in the very beginning, in 1960, when the team was formed, they weren't initially the Oakland Raiders.
okay,
They were actually the Oakland Seniors, which is
okay.
the name that the Oakland Tribune, the local paper, had a contest, and that's the one that won. But like
Ugh,
after 8 days, there was such an uproar that no one liked the Oakland Seniors that the AFL owners, the American Football League owners, before the NFL, back when there was an
right,
AFL and an NFL, they selected the Oakland Raiders. And initially their colors were black and gold, not black and silver. And it wasn't
interesting.
until 1964 when Al Davis, took over ownership
Hmm.
that he changed the colors to black and silver. He changed the logo to look more like a pirate.
Hmm.
And actually, it was interesting. He modeled the model for the head of the Raider was actually a famous American Western actor by the name of Randolph Scott. So it's Randolph Scott's face with a eye patch. But that was kind of, I thought, interesting of kind of the beginning of the Raiders. And then, from Al Davis, you got, the Just When Baby and,
Right.
and the Raider Nation and commitment to excellence. But the interesting thing, the fan that suggested the Raiders, and he ended up winning the contest after the senior name was gone. He picked Raiders because, and I thought this was interesting because he talked about that. Raider implies early sustained offense. I thought you would like this, even though
Oh,
we're not
okay.
biased. Right? Early
I know.
sustained offense, carrying the fight to the opponents. So what it was really was about was a early sustained offense carrying that. They were raiders. They were going to attack, but basically they're pirates.
Okay. And so how are we going to categorize these pirates? What are their attributes? What do they look like? What kind of weaponry would they have?
Well, like we just that the Panthers have lost, the Raiders, will lose too, because most of their attacks, their raids, were not on land; they were at sea, and most of it was, was a ship to ship. They were attacking Spanish galleons. So the first thing you look at, one of their big weapons, was cannons, right? And I'm thinking you're probably, the AFL team name Rumble commissioner, are they going to allow them to bring their cannons on the field or not?
No,
probably
no
not.
Cannons.
Okay. No cannons, but that makes a difference, because what they would typically do would come up and they would fire their cannons with either cannonballs or chain shot, and they would take out the ship that they're raiding, the mast and the sail, so they couldn't get away. And then they had what they called grape shot, where they'd actually shoot, the crew of the opposing ship if they did not surrender immediately. But if that's the way they're gonna, there's nothing special about a raider as far as size. You're gonna have Habitine size raiders, and you're gonna have,
I'm not so sure they had Habitine size raiders.
Well, they have average size raiders. They're not physically. There was nothing, opposing or imposing about them. But their weaponry, when they did pull up the ships, they had muskets, they had rifles.
Yep.
So they would start firing, with the rifles. They also had, pistols that were, like flintlock, or they called them blunderbuss pistols. So they had pistols. But really what they were designed for was the close hand-to-hand combat. So, once they fired their rifles, then they would be pulling their pistols out, and then also their sword, which the pirates would call a cutlass. So they had a large sword that they would use in close hand-to-hand combat. So their goal was to get on that other ship if they didn't surrender, and start using their pistols and their swords and close hand-to-hand combat with the crew of the other ship.
That's interesting. It's interesting you say that, because I actually Googled, no joke, what is a raider? And the Merriam-Webster or whatever dictionary came up, and one definition of raider was a soldier skilled in hand-to-hand or close quarter combat, which I thought was interesting. And that's really what it would be, because once they breach the other ship, or once they get onto the other ship, it's obviously there's no long range combat. If they were to fight the other crew, it would all be hand to hand. But that's also the strength of the Black Panther, right? The Black Panther needs to get in close, much like the Giants or whatever. They can't fight from range, and so that'll be an interesting dynamic. That it's actually two strengths playing against each other.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think that played into the pirate or the raider was fear, where they would do things. Not only did they have the skull and crossbones flag, that would be flying on their ship, but they would do things like light their beards on fire, and be on fire when they're attacked, but like just to freak out and scare the crew. Which in this case, the Panthers aren't going to care, right? No. They're not going to care. So there won't be any really fear. They're really, as far as the Panthers, they're just another man, right? There's nothing about that. But there was a lot of fear tactic involved with the goal was not to fight. The goal was to get the other ship to surrender, and then they didn't have to damage the ship. No one got injured. So that was really the main goal, is could get them to surrender without actually doing a battle.
And according to your research, were they skilled fighters? Is that definition accurate? A lot of times people base it off like Pirates of the Caribbean or whatever, and that they're just kind of thugs, almost like the Rangers were a bit. But what, like in the Vikings research, part of the culture was to be an excellent warrior. Is that a similar notion in pirate?
Yeah, I think they had to be, because at the end of the day, if the other ship didn't surrender, they would have to have that's what they did, right? That was their livelihood. If they weren't able to plunder, right? They didn't have anything. So I think they would had to been good. To be a successful pirate, you'd have to be, a good at
skilled,
hand-to-hand
yeah,
combat, so
exactly, a skilled fighter.
skilled warrior.
Okay, so now we get to the good part. For people who haven't listened before, if this is your first episode of this, I encourage you to listen to the other ones. But basically, what happens is we take 11 of each team name mascot, and we put them on a football field sized arena. It's walled in, 120 yards by 53 yards, and we put each team of 11 on each 35-yard line. Basically, blow a whistle, and we hypothesize we're going. So to review real quick before we hypothesize how the matchup will go, leopards are smaller sized big cats, but very, very powerful, very, very strong jaw, look to suffocate their prey, look to get in their neck and kill their opponents by neck. But mainly they attack via stealth. So that's actually a weakness of theirs in this fight. Much like the sharks or the great whites, the normal approach of how they would kill a prey is not available. So we'll see how they adjust there. And then going with pirates. Pirates are average sized people, skilled hand-to-hand fighters, have a weaponry choice of a rifle and a pistol, but I believe they would probably only have one shot of each, correct? Like,
they're flintlocks, so it's
right.
like, in a battle they would have the shot, and then it would take a long time to reload.
Right. So in
they
this
basically
matchup,
have one rifle shot, one pistol shot,
right,
and then they don't have time to reload.
Right, because leopards, when they decide to attack, they charge. So a leopard covering 30 yards, we'll see if they even get to their second shot. So average sized people, skilled hand-to-hand fighters, have swords, pistols, rifles. Okay, nothing remarkably endearing or no great qualities of size or strength, no particular strategy involved or great war minds. Basically, just men with weapons versus leopards in a way.
Yeah,
in a way. So if we took both sides, lined them up at the 35-yard line each, blew a whistle, said go, what do you hypothesize would happen?
Well, this is the first interesting discussion we need to have is, I think the Raiders, and even getting back to the reason that they got the name was that, sustained, relentless offense. All they know is to attack, right? There's nothing about there's nothing about defense with the Raiders. It's all about offense.
Don't make a joke. Don't make a joke.
I'll just leave it.
Don't make a joke.
Basically, the Raiders were all about offense, right? They weren't defensive. Okay. Nothing to do with the Swarco Raiders, just the Raiders.
Yeah. Right? Understood.
Okay. So they're going to attack, right? The big question is, what does the Black Panther dark-coated leopards do? Because they're lined up out there, right? They're comfortable in the trees. There's no trees. They're in the wide open. They're stealth hunters. They as you said, they get really, really close, mm-hmm. and then they pounce. Mm-hmm. So if you really think about that, I'm not sure they charge. On the 35-yard line, when that whistle blows, I think they're out of their element. They're not in a tree. They're not camouflaged. And I almost think that if by looking at the 11 Raiders charging them, probably from the very beginning, the Raiders will probably start firing their muskets, their rifles, right? I think the Panthers turn and run.
Okay.
Because they're a shy animal anyway, and right. Their element of stealth hunting is totally removed. So I envision the Raiders charging. They probably, as soon as the whistle blew, I think they'd probably fire the first thing. They'd all fire their muskets.
I would imagine so.
And those were not all that accurate.
From 30 yards. That's a far shot.
Yeah, 30 yards. I think that that was close range. Ship to ship. I think it just scares
right
the leopards, right, and the mm-hmm. Black Panthers, and I think they turn and run.
Okay.
with the Raiders charging them. I think that's the first discussion we need to have.
Yeah. To side note, I did read when I was reading about panther or leopards attacking humans. I did read that they actually prefer not to. They particularly don't like humans. They try to avoid humans at all costs, to be honest. Uh, the based on research, the only time that they view humans as prey is in a defense mechanism where they feel like they're being hunted, or where they're not the apex predator in that area and they're starving, basically, like it's a last resort. So here, I think you're right. The notion of immediately attack like a berserker or like a raider or like a giant, they're not overly known aggressive animals, might make sense. So I think shoot, scare them, and then like they are known to be defensive. So we catch them off, or they catch them off. I shouldn't say we. The Raiders catch them off.
No bias here. No bias.
The Raiders catch them off guard and maybe scare them, frighten them with the rifle shot, and maybe they run away. But how are they going to react because they cannot leave the field?
Well, to me, that's the thing. I think they turn and run, and they run, through their end zone and get to the end of the stadium. There's nowhere else to go. Right now, they're backed up. Now their back is to a wall. Now they're defensive, right? So they can't go any further. So I think at that point they turn and prepare, to fight.
Okay.
So to me, they turn and run. They run through the back of their end zone. They're at the back wall of the stadium and they can't go any further. And then they turn
and they're a cornered animal
to defend themselves.
And what
they're
is
cornered? They're a
cornered
animal.
Animals?
When you get a cornered animal, then it changes things. So I think meanwhile, the Raiders have fired their muskets and now they're not just closing the gap between 35 and 35. They're having to run the whole length of the field, right? And having, so I think, they're not used to that, right? These are guys that are used to, climbing up a ship and fighting, but they're not. So I think once they hit the end zone, the Black Panthers end zone, I think you got a lot of out of breath, worn out, not worn out, but out of breath Raiders, right?
I know from personal experience, a 65-yard sprint.
Yeah.
If I'm doing the math right, a 65-yard sprint is not the easiest thing in the world.
No. So I think they would do it. But once they kind of got there and then they realized, okay, now they're not chasing the Panthers. The Panthers have turned, right? They're cornered. But at the same time, I think the Raiders are out of breath.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So I think at that moment, then you have the Panthers start, being backed up, start attacking the Raiders as they're trying to catch their breath. But
so now you're in a scenario. Now you're in a scenario where they're 10 yards apart. The Panthers are backed up. The Raiders have already used their rifle, so the rifle's gone. So now you have a Raider with a sword and a pistol,
right?
With Panthers in a 10-yard space, and the Panthers are backed up. And I think you're exactly right. I think at that point, just like any cornered animal, they're going to become aggressive.
Right.
And so in that scenario, it's still 11-11. We haven't lost anybody. What do you think happens?
Well, I think to start out with, you'd probably have some success from the Panthers, right? Because, it's that flight or fight response and their adrenaline's up and they have nowhere to go. And I think they attack at the same time the Raiders are trying to orient themselves and catch their breath. So I think they have some early success. I think, that you probably have, let's say, a Panthers able to attack one of the closest Raider and getting down, and then probably a couple other Black Panthers would probably jump in. So I think you probably have like a couple Raider casualties with the Panthers just catching them out of breath and not oriented. So I think at first you'll have some success with the Panthers.
Yep. Yep. Panthers aren't typically known to be pack animals, to your point, though. So,
No.
so I don't know. I don't know if they would just stay one on one, or if they would try to pack up on one raider. But I think the scenario of multiple Panthers actually attacking one raider might obviously would be detrimental to that single raider, but might be an advantage to the raider because again, the raiders still have a sword and a pistol. So if three raiders are attacking, or excuse me, three panthers are attacking one raider, that means there's two raiders left over based on the 3-on-3 matchup. That
Well,
might
I
would
was just
attack
thinking,
the
the
Panthers.
Raiders are not going to be in a perfect straight line. There's going to be, there's going to be some that were faster than
Okay, I
others,
see
right?
what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
Right. So there's going to be
So the
some that
ones, the
get there
fastest,
first.
the Sandros are going to get killed as opposed to the
Yes,
Shawns.
yes. Yeah,
Okay, good. I
the
like that.
fast Raiders that get there first that
I like
lose their
that.
breath probably would be the ones that and to your
Good.
point, the Panthers are not pack animals, but they're going to attack the closest Raider, right? And so that closest Raider could be the closest Raider for two or three Panthers, and they all pounce, on that one. So yeah, the faster Raiders that got down there first that are celebrating, that they had that 65-yard sprint are probably going to be the ones that that are going to be attacked by two or three Panthers
Okay,
and have trouble.
so that makes sense. But now, as the rest of the Raiders get there, even out of breath, what do you think will happen?
Well, I think the Raiders have got there and they've caught their breath while the Panthers were eating Sandy, while they're munching on him, and then I think they have the time. They've got their pistols out, close range. Those are designed for close range. They've got their swords out, so a pistol in one hand and a sword in another. And I think they now they're in close range. The pistols can be deadly. And I think and those are musket balls too,
Right,
right?
those are
Those aren't,
like,
those aren't,
yeah, those
yeah,
aren't. They're really thick.
they're
No, no,
not
no,
little 22 caliber, bullets. They're big
no.
musket balls.
Yeah,
So I think they take out just with their pistols, take out, let's say 4 or 5 Panthers,
but the Panthers
right?
have already taken out how many Raiders? The
I would
fastest
just
Raider.
say, I mean, if you look at it from the scenario you're talking about, like your skill, like the
Yeah,
11,
so Fabian
so your receive,
Alfata, Sandro, and Toby are all
yeah,
there. Okay,
your fastest receivers and your fastest running back, were sacrificed.
okay.
But
AP
now you got the O
AP's
line,
close too.
and
AP's
the
on the board.
quarterback would probably still be running down the
Nah,
field, right? The line would be there. The quarterback's probably still on like the 30-yard line, or he's still coming,
yeah,
right?
I'm not helping it.
Yeah, you're
I would
not
be,
close yet.
I'd be face down on the 20 asking for oxygen.
Yeah, when it's over, the quarterback will come and stand on the pile of dead
That's right.
Panthers with
Yeah,
1 foot,
exactly.
and
Yeah. Good
and
work,
giving
guys. Okay,
a. But I
so
think
the
now the
initial
other at
attack,
that point,
we say three Raiders perish in that initial cornering of the Panthers. And then
right?
as the rest of the eight, you're saying that the rest of the eight immediately with their pistols maybe take out four. So now we're looking at 8-on-7 with close quarter combat. So it's
Yeah, and I think that point, like I said,
swords versus Panther.
they're not big cats,
No.
and I think that's where the Raiders pull out their cutlasses and just start hacking them.
Okay.
Even if they try to attack them, they've got. I mean, a cutlass is a large sword.
Mm-hmm.
It's those large, big, heavy duty swords
Mm-hmm.
that with and a 68-pound big cat is really not going to be much match for a large cutlass coming down any part of their body. Even if it's not their head, it's going to do a lot of damage. So the Panthers that weren't shot with the musket balls from the pistols, I think the other 8 Raiders or 7 Raiders and the quarterback still coming, still trailing, the 7 Raiders would do the damage with the with their cutlasses.
Yeah, so in actuality the biggest advantage was just the weaponry from the
weaponry
Raiders, giving them,
yeah,
I think, and even giving them swords. Like I think if the Panthers would have fought the Rangers, I still think they went. Well, they had 6-shoot pistols, so maybe that would be different.
Yeah, they actually had rifles too. So I think they the Rangers would have actually probably taken out some Panthers right
More
when the
at
whistle.
the range, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
because they had rifles that had a lot better accuracy than the muskets
Right.
that the Raiders had.
No, I think that's an accurate depiction. So we're gonna go with the Raiders over the Panthers because in because the huge advantage of a leopard is stealthy sneak attack
Yes.
kills, and putting them in the open with a skilled swordsman is just too big of a disadvantage to overcome. And so in our third edition of the AFL Team Name Rumble, the Raiders top the Panthers basically 8-0 with 8 left over. So not
Right.
not a blowout by any means. It wasn't. The Panthers had success early. It's just the close quarter combat advantage goes to the Raiders.
Right. And the Raiders lost a few skill position players,
Yeah, that's what you get for being fast. I mean,
that's right. In this case,
right.
fast, it would be a detriment to you.
Exactly. Well, perfect. So that means we have the winner of our next matchup, which will be Dragons Blue Devils, which I'm sure will be interesting. They will play or face the Raiders in the semifinals, joining the Raiders now joining the Giants and the Vikings in the next round.
Yeah, it's starting to really get interesting as far as as the brackets are starting to be crystallized, and
the semifinals and finals might be interesting. So,
right.
So Raiders over Panthers. Thank you so much, Father. Your expertise is always appreciated. Yeah, and I hope this is also contentious. Let people know. Again, we are very open to discussion about this. That's the whole point of it. So if you strongly agree, if you strongly disagree, if you think we missed out some details, let us know. Message me on the Facebook page, message me on the YouTube page, and we'd be happy to revisit it if we think it's significant.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that no Raiders were really harmed in this depiction. So Sandy's okay.
No, absolutely not. So, he's fine. He's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Father, thanks again. And
yeah, it was fun.
Until next time.
Okay, sounds good, Sean. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.